This is Jack Davis. This is the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. The time is 7:33, and I call this meeting to order. We have four things on our agenda. Three of them really deal with the same thing. So I'm just going to go through a couple of things. We have some members of the Three Musketeer Building Committee here. That's Holmes, Royal, and Henley. All for one for all. To answer any questions that we have, but basically there are three separate bonding resolutions. So if I go back a little bit to how this came about, the Board of Ed in May did their education specs in May 21. August 21, the Board of Selectmen authorized the forming of three separate building committees, one for each school, and an umbrella committee, the HHR. And then we followed the same in September, doing three separate committees and HHR. Part of that was at the time, the Board of the State Department of Education and the people who do the reviews had advised us that we need three separate building committees, and I'll get more into that later. So we will be doing bonding and appropriations separate for each of those, because even though they now said that we might not have needed three separate committees, they do need to look at each of these projects individually, because part of our reimbursement will be calculated based upon the number of students, what the future enrollment is, what the square footage of the schools are, and all these other little metrics that are individualized to each of the three schools. So it's very appropriate that we could end up with three different reimbursement rates. The state also has to figure out whether or not we're a renovation or whether or not we're an expansion or whatever else it is. And there's differences on whether or not we do that. If it's, I believe, a renovation, I may get them mixed up. If we're putting something up in the tiles and we're taking down the tiles and we don't put those same tiles back up, they may not be considered part of the reimbursement rate. But that the committee can figure out, and we'll know more about that later. The important thing to know is that this is nothing more than seed money. They got the original seed money for $121,000 from the Board of Finance from their capital reserve. That was so that they could go out and hire a grant writer and start some preliminary work. We will do this on our meeting on the 18th. 10 days later, they'll have the full amount so that they can start to go and negotiate some real salaries so that they can meet their timeline of coming back to the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen in the latter part of May and to us in June for the real cost of these projects. Right now, we're going to do three appropriation and bonding resolutions at our June 9th meeting. Each of those three will be amended for the full amount. So while there's a methodology for how they did their calculations, I'm going to say it really doesn't matter because they just need enough money to carry them through to June so that they make the June 30th cutoff. The importance of the June 30th cutoff is we're not allowed to start on the schools until the department in the Department of Education for Connecticut has reviewed our plans and said, here's what the reimbursement rate is going to be. So if we don't make the June 30th date, we end up delaying the project for a year, which isn't necessarily good because if you recall, one of the portables from, I believe, Henley is scheduled to save us some money and move to the fire tower. So getting all this stuff done is good. So let me go and I have to print one thing out and then we can, are there any questions on this while I'm yammering away?
Jack, do you want Chris to just take a minute to introduce himself? I bet a lot of the folks on the call have never met him before, and we're lucky to have him.
Well, I don't know if we're lucky to have him, but he can introduce himself.
Yeah, we'll see. It's probably too early to tell. Um, anyway, hi, I'm Chris Price. This is my first experience in town government. I'm very, very pleased to be working with this committee, and I'm really, really pleased that I have Jill McCammon and David Martin by my side helping me. These guys know their way around, and they've been super for for a couple of months that I've been involved so far. Um, but we have a big project. We have three schools that are going to be significantly renovated. In really, really round numbers, each school is about a $20 million project. And we've got a really compressed time frame to get our grant package together. As Jack was saying, to the state, that has to be submitted by no later than June 30th. It's got to be three separate grant applications, as Jack noted, and there could be real variations among each of the three, right? Depending on whether they're deemed to be alterations and expansions or renovations. As he was saying, the formula for square footage will impact the reimbursement rate. So each one needs to be looked at carefully. We think we have a good grant consultant helping us. And we had a very productive meeting with the state, a virtual meeting with the state yesterday. Dr. Adley arranged that, and our grant consultant was on that, and we got a lot of information from the state. So, and it sounds like there's going to be an open communication line with them as we proceed ahead. But please, if you guys have any questions about the methodology for calculating the amounts we're asking for, as Jack said, it's a pretty educated estimate, but it's an estimate, right? And it's really bridge appropriation so that we get the authority to sign up the actual architect, the actual construction manager, some of the more high dollar consultants like traffic consultants and folks like that we're going to need. So we kind of backed into it using now 1-year-old estimated budget numbers from Northeast Cooperative Architects, and we'll obviously sharpen our pencils and have a lot more clarity, a lot more precision when we come back in June for the full appropriation.
So, Chris, you're going to find that when I give the report to the RTM, I'm going to sort of not talk about the numbers, because my experience will be that even though we say, oh, these are good estimates, but they're estimates and they could be higher, they could be lower. If they come in higher in June, somebody in the RTM is going to ask you to reconcile between the numbers that we are giving them in April and the numbers we're giving them when it comes back. So I spoke to Jen about it, and I'm going to say that they use some basic philosophy, put in an inflation rate of 7.5, which is what the administration is using, and they added 10% contingency. And the only number I'm going to give you is the combination of the three schools will fall someplace between 70 and $80 million, and leave it at that. So I think that eliminates when you come back. I agree that it was very scientific and your approach was really good. But for the RTM for this first round of initial funding, it's
That's fine. That's fine with me. Credit to Dave Martin on the methodology and the calculation. But yeah, that's fine with me.
Yeah, I just want to make it a lot smoother the last time. I had already spoken to Dave about the madness of how we're going to try and get it through. But are there any? Thank you, Joe, for having reminding me that Chris should be introduced. Everybody knows Jill at this time, and David, being a former alumni, is in good shape. So I think we're in overall good condition. Are there any other questions for the building committee? If not, then I need somebody to move consideration and action on an appropriation of $1.4 million for planning, design, construction, and renovation / extension or alteration of the Holmes Elementary School in the town of Darien, and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $1.4 million to meet said appropriation. Moved by Beth, seconded by Peter. The good thing about having kids is that you have crayons still around. Okay, do I have any no votes? Do I have any abstentions? Seeing none, this is unanimous. Okay, second resolution, consideration and action on an appropriation of $1,050,000 for the planning, design, and construction for renovation, extension, or alteration of the, I'm sorry, the first one was Hinley. Sorry, Hinley was 1.4 million. This is Holmes. So we're going, can I have a motion to adjust the motion for the following one to say the 1.5 was for, 1.4 was from Hinley? I have Beth, I have Louisa. Everybody is in favor of it. Thank you. So now we'll go to Holmes. Construction for the Holmes Elementary School for the town of Darien, authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $1,050,000 to meet said appropriation. Do I have somebody move it? I have Beth. I have well, Martha raised her hand before, so I'm going to take it from the last time. So I have Martha seconding. Do I have any no votes? Do I have any abstentions? Seeing none, it's unanimous. And finally, the last resolution is consideration action on the appropriation of $1,250,000 for the planning, design, and construction for renovation, extension, or alteration of the Royals Elementary School in the town of Darien, and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $1,250,000 to meet said appropriation. I have Barry is moving it. I have Louisa as second. Do I have any no votes? Seeing none. Do I have any abstentions? Seeing none. It's passed unanimously. Thank you all. Chris, Jill, and David, and I'll see you on Friday. I spoke to Ed. He's out of town with his family, so he won't be joining us.
All right. Well,
But
thank you all very much for your time on this. Really, really appreciate your consideration of this so we can get moving, and we'll, I guess, meet with the Rules Committee on the 4th and then with the whole gang on the 18th.
Sounds
April.
good. Thank you, guys.
Much appreciated, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. On to the budget. I'm interested in any comments on the deliberation so far at the Board of Finance budget deliberations. Last night they covered Parks and Rec, Public Works, and the Board of Ed. I was a little surprised with the direction on the Board of Ed and the questions that were asked versus what wasn't asked, because some of the questions that asked really have more to do with the contract negotiations that will be starting shortly. But we're out of control once you have a contract of the administration is or the Board of Finance. So, but it was interesting information, but nothing budget related, in my opinion. But are there any comments on the budget so far? Is there any comments of what? Go ahead, Beth.
The only thing I wanted to just highlight is the apparent difficulty. This is probably going to come as a surprise to nobody, but the apparent difficulty there is in obtaining vehicles that we've already budgeted for. vehicles last year that we had appropriated money for. One of them they just got, and the other two they're still waiting for. And so it means that vehicles that were in the Board of Ed budget for this upcoming year, we are, needless to say, anticipating similar issues because there just aren't any cars on the lots anywhere. And, they want a Suburban to transport kids, but it's hard to get your hands on a Suburban.
Well,
that was the only thing that I was interested to note.
And I sort of, and I apologize to Mr. Palin, I sort of put him on the spot because they have a couple of options here. They could have, I forgot the meeting also on Thursday, but they can meet on Thursday, move to get those vehicles and take them from the general fund, have a memo written by the Board of Ed and submit it to Seth by Monday when we're meeting on rules. And we can put it on the agenda. It'll go to the Education Committee and ourselves. And we can get them approved so that if we meet on the 18th, on the 28th, because it's 10 days afterwards, they would be able to put in the order for that, which really moves it up by almost 2 months. All right. The other, and in fact, they could then remove those vehicles from the capital budget when they're voting on it on the 5th. Or they can choose on the 5th to go and make that motion. And then when we go on the budget night in May, we could vote on that separately. But on a night that we have so many other motions going on, it's not one that I would prefer because it just complicates things. Or they could do nothing and then effective July 1st, they can put in the order for the vehicles. And since I don't think anybody's discussing whether or not we shouldn't have those vehicles, I would only hope, and when I spoke briefly to Jen agreed with me, it just makes sense for them to address it at their Thursday meeting, move it on to rules on the 4th, and let us just deal with it on the 18th so that we can get out ahead of getting it so that you're right, Beth, especially on the Suburban, they get it sooner and it saves them and the town money. So, David.
Jack, I was just going to tell you, I have the agenda for Thursday and there's a transfer from the Board of Finance contingency to allow that to happen. So it should be tomorrow night.
Okay, so you're doing it from contingency?
That's what the transfer reads, yeah.
But just then for the Suburban?
$62,000 for the Suburban, yeah.
That's an interesting concept. Well, that allows them to do it. No, the reason is if they have the money, all right, then if it comes out of the contingency on Thursday, then on Friday they have the appropriation. They don't have to wait for the RTM to meet and the 10 days following, so they can order it the next day. So they can order it on Friday. So it does pick up about 30 days or so sooner. So no problem with that. At least it's being done. But it's just the Suburban. By the way, while we're on, one of the things that I should have mentioned earlier was Sarah Newman is on this call. Sarah is the Board of Selectmen representative on the HHR umbrella committee. So I just want to recognize that Sarah's here.
Thank you, Jack.
And you're welcome. And Ed has joined us. And unfortunately, Ed, we've already gotten done with the resolution on the 3 bonding. Is there any other comments on this budget? Because if there is none, I think we have a meeting scheduled for the 6th that I might have to change, but I just assume that if there's no desire to make any modifications to, beyond what the Board of Finance may do. That we meet early in April and approve the budgets, and move forward and go from there. So, unless anybody wants to wait around to the latter part of April to do this, I'm willing to take advice from anyone.
Eric, you're saying we wait for the Board of Finance at this point to tell us what they're doing, and then we meet.
Right, right. I mean, one of the things that I've asked from Jim Palin is to give us, that he has to be able to give some direction. You went before the town and said, 2.5%, 3%. Now, I think we can all agree that the 3%, based upon the rising healthcare costs and some of the other fuel costs, are, made life a little bit difficult. But the concept of, I was thinking about it after one of the individuals spoke last night in the public comment part of the Board of Finance meeting. It's real nice to say inflation's at 7%, all-time high, but it's worthwhile to look at how the inflation number is comprised. A good part of the inflation is based upon the increased cost in cars. Well, the basic operations of the town and the Board of Ed isn't buying cars. So that inflation factor should come out. When we're doing vehicles, yes, I would expect in the capital side, there's going to be some increase. The other big increase is on fuel, but the school is locked into their fuel throughout 2023. So that's not going to be affecting their budget. And the other thing is food. And that might affect the cafeteria prices of what the kids are paying, but it's not the running of the schools that are affected by inflation. So while it's nice to say, oh, inflation is horrible, the fact of the matter is some of those same drivers aren't really affecting the school's budget. A lot of it has to do with they're adding 8 or 9 FTEs. And that's, at 100,000 a shot, that's $900 to $1 million right there. I had a private conversation with one of the Board of Finance members whose name I'm not going to be mentioning, but in that conversation, they said that the Board of Education spent more time talking about DEI and open choice than they did about the budget. And I added in bring your own device, and it's true. So when somebody said that, speaking that they did a deep dive into the budget, I was wondering if I missed certain Board of Ed meetings that they attended and I was unaware of, because I personally didn't see that. That being said, we'll wait for the direction to see where the Board of Finance is coming out. I don't think they're happy with a 3.75 increase, but whether or not it should be a 3.5 or 3.25, they're the ones who are going to have to determine, and also then reconcile with how come you come and say 3% to us and 3 months later it's like goes out the window. Next year, don't bother telling us what the guidance is if you're not going to live by it. So just my initial reaction to that. But any other comments on the budget? If not, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting? I have Barry, I have James. Do I have any no votes? Seeing none. Do I have any abstentions? Seeing none. Minutes are approved. And once again, we're going to try and get this done in less than 30 minutes for the second meeting in a row. that we should keep on this roll for a while. I like these type of meetings. Can I have a motion to adjourn? I have Peter. I have too many hands raising at once. I'll take Bert as the second. All those in favor, I don't care about noes and abstentions. Have a good weekend, all. See you soon.